Uh-oh.
All right, so let's get to work. First thing I think I'm gonna do is, well, you might notice that this is standard super lead, right? So we got 3 Novel 9-pin socket holes here. We're gonna need 4. So let's add a socket, right? So let's start by doing that. It's good to do things in kind of like an order, and maybe everybody's got a different idea of like what they like to do first. But you know, certain things are going to be a lot easier to do at certain times. If I say certain again, I'll be certain and not say that. Like you wouldn't want to have to drill this after you put all the sockets in, you know, obviously, right? So there are things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little piece of mask here so I can draw upon the chassis with my ballpoint pen and get out some rulers out of the drawer here. Get a little block. Okay, so let's measure where the center is of these. So it looks like 1.1 is what we want to go at. So I'm going to basically draw or mark right here, using this as a sort of a guide to, so I know where the end of the chassis is, right? Go 1.1. I'm going to connect these dots or dashes. All right? So there we have our center line. Now we're going to, I mean, usually these are what, like 1.5 2 inches apart. 2 inches, 2.5, 3, 5. All right, so we got 2.5. So we're going to do that. All right, so we go 1, 2.5. So that would be the location of our other socket. All right, and then we need to mark for where the holes are for attachment, and they're at a 45-degree angle, so I use a framing square, right? And I kind of put it on the edge here, line it up on the middle, right? And that is the line that we're going to use to mount the socket. Let me grab a socket here real quick. So basically, once I drill the hole, I'll insert the socket in the hole and then mark out the 2 positions along this line, and then I'll have a good 45-degree angle there. So to drill out this thing, I'm basically going to use what's known as a unibit. And I think if you've been here previously, you're going to sort of know what the unibit is, right? So this is an example of a stepped unibit, right? So the way it would work is you would start with a small, I usually start with a 1/16 inch bit and drill a pilot hole. And then I'll go ahead and use my unibit to follow through that pilot hole. And then these come in different sizes. So I've got a larger unibit, which is actually on the drill press right now, or down by the drill press right now. And I'll use that for getting out to this final size. And then we'll do a quick deburring, and we'll have our hole, and then we can mark and drill. So let me go ahead and drill this stuff out, and I'll be right back. All right, so we went down there and drilled out our hole. So now it's time to line up the socket, right? Unfortunately, there's a little bit of cutting oil, right? Use a little bit of cutting oil to make the unibit go through the metal a little bit easier. Heat is your enemy, right? But the oil gets all over the place, so it's hard to draw on an oily sort of surface with my pen. There we go. So now we can just go ahead. We can still see through the tape to line this up on the 45. And then we can mark, right? And those are our attachment holes. So now I'll just grab a drill bit and very carefully start it, right? Because it's going to want to walk on this hard surface. So I'm just trying to make a little bit of a mark. I couldn't find my punch, but a good idea always is to use a punch. Put the punch there and just give it a whack, and it'll give you a little dent as to where you want the hole, and then your bit will not walk. But if you got some tape on there, the tape will sort of help the bit register and hold true to where you want it. So I've got two little basic minor, not really drilled all the way through there, just a little of the way. So I want to save that small bit. I'm going to go to a slightly larger bit here and chase through. Then we're going to go to finally the 1/8 inch bit. And I went through on that one. I was going to try to go through a little of the way and then come through the other side to avoid the burr, but that's okay. We've got these small holes are easy to deburr anyway. All right, we'll give it a quick deburr. So for that, I have this little countersink bit that I've used for the last 30 years or so for exactly this purpose. Just getting that all cleaned up. Steel is a lot harder, obviously, than aluminum is, which is what I usually work with. There we go. Yeah, and there's definitely, there's differences beyond just the hardness of it all. Steel is magnetic, obviously, right? So, let me grab something here. Right, so steel is magnetic. All right, we got our little Neo mag here, and that's on there good. These things are all electromagnetic devices in reality, right? Because the way that everything works is electromagnetics. The whole universe is all electromagnetics. So that being said, your transformers will generate fields. Your choke, your power transformer, anything that's big and iron and wound with wires and has electricity flying around it is going to start to generate some fields. So these steel chassis, they will actually, the magnetic field will propagate better in a ferrous magnetic sort of chassis. An aluminum one, obviously not magnetic, so they tend to obviously not react the same way magnetically. So there is a difference in how they work. So that being said, who cares? Right? Here's some more stuff we need to vacuum. We'll vacuum this stuff up. We're going to peel the tape on this guy. Got ourselves a nice little hole there. Now would be a good idea to degrease it. All right, to get some of that 3-in-1 or some of that cutting oil off of the chassis, so that we have good connections, right? We don't have any oil in there preventing the socket shield from grounding well to the chassis. So let me grab some, I can use some naphtha on this, and I'll be right back. All right, so I got a little piece of paper towel with some naphtha on it. It's just basically a petroleum-based thinner. You can get it at a home center. Stinky, but not repulsive. Never's really gotten me goofy, so that's good. While I'm at it, just going to degrease. Not that I don't think this looks pretty clean in here. I'm just going to go ahead and degrease where these pots are going to go, because that's a ground plane right there. I'm going to degrease the inside of the chassis a little bit. I mean, this is very clean. I'm actually shocked at how clean it is. Usually when you degrease or attempt to degrease anything metal, you end up with just an absolute, totally discolored rag when you're done. There's no grease in there. Interesting. Okay. So where are we going to start? Where are we going to continue now? You know what? It might be cool to start on the board. Now that we know where all this stuff is, excuse me, going to go. We have our board over here, right? So that's, yes, that is where it is going to go, right? So the way I want to do this is I'm going to use sort of like a military style of wiring, right? Which involves a wrap, right? There's a couple ways you could do this. You could go from underneath and use it as an eyelet, right? And you could solder all your leads underneath here and use them as eyelets. And then the wires will come out below. Or you could wrap around the turret itself. I'm going to try the wrap around the turret. I don't know where I swallowed this frog from. But there it is. So the way I would do this is to start basically paying out what we call paying out the leads, right? So you would take like some wire or whatever, and you would wrap it right to where you want it, right? Let's say this cathode over here, right? And then you would sort of guesstimate, you would solder it on and then guesstimate how much lead you would want, and then trim it off and move along the entire board until you have all your leads on these turrets, right? It's a little bit of greasy fingerprints in here I don't like. I'm going to clean those off. And then you can install your components above what you've done. Right? So once you have all your leads out there, then you could start putting in all your resistors and capacitors and solder those in place. And then you'll have a full board with, the wires hanging off it, the components on there. You can reserve that aside and then start populating the chassis with your sockets and with your standoffs and potentiometers and filter caps and transformers and chokes, jacks and selector switches and all that good stuff, right? So you would just drop this in and go to town wiring, and you're on your way to being finished. So that's how we're going to proceed with this. So let's go ahead and just start with the board, right? So let's fire up the soldering iron. Get that in place. All right. All right, so we're going to start first, I think, with doing the leads that would be carrying the voltage or B plus supply, right? And that's on a Marshall, it's run sort of under the components, right? So we're going to get ourselves oriented about what everything is on this board. Okay, so here are your 10Ks dropping resistors. Here would be the junction of the 100Ks. So let's start there. And you know, it's a good idea to follow an instructional sheet. I've just been doing this for too long, maybe, I don't know. But I've always had a good memory for things like this. Sometimes I still goof up, but I've always had kind of a good good memory for circuits and drawing schematics and doing things like that. So, it sounds weird, but I don't know. I think almost every amp that's pretty popular, I think I can build from memory, or just draw a schematic from memory, or a layout, or whatever. I don't know why it sticks in my head. Alright, so I'm going to go and strip this stuff. Alright, we're going to just kind of wrap it around the turret. Alright, like so. There we go. That's nice. Keep going. Well, for this, all right, it would be a 10K, there'd be a joint here, all right? So let's go ahead and just strip off a bunch of this. And then we can kind of, let's go this way, all right? Hold it down with our thumb, wind it around, go around this way. Where's my wire cut? Yeah. Probably about this much. Bing. Then we can take off this lead, the rest of that insulator. Here's our pliers and just kind of wrap it around there. Alright, and then we can cut them. Just get them nice and neat like that. Okay. Now here would be where we would end up going to feed the phase inverter. All right. So at this 10K, so the phase inverter is bink, bink, bink. That's that right here. All right, this is the phase inverter. So we're going to run a lead across here. Grab another little piece of wire. This is not tinned, so I'm going to tin it. That'll help it stay neat while I'm bending it. We'll go from this side, underneath it. All right. There we go. So you sort of see what we're getting at here, right? There we are. Should have a fan running, so I'm not breathing in all this crap. But the fan makes a lot of noise. So maybe I'll do a bunch of this stuff on camera, and then do like a bunch more of it off camera and run the fan and kind of come back and forth. That might be a good idea anyway, considering that, you know, the amount of hours I'm actually going to spend trying to build this thing. I would run out of hard drive space in about a couple of days, right? Because this is going to take probably, you know, 40 hours. No, well, maybe not 40, but it's going to take a number of hours to build. And I'm sure that, you know, checking in every so often with progress and giving some sort of key instructions might be the way to go in this case. Why is it not grabbing? There it is. So solder this guy on. There we go. Okay, and then we should have done this lead too, coming off of there, right? Because that's got to go to feed the supply, but that's okay. Get a little more. Come around. This is fine. Now let me just make room for this lead here. There we go. Nice. Okay. All right, now we got to go up to the junction. So this would be the feedback resistor, right? So these would be the 10Ks that would be used. So basically we got to go up to this turret here, I believe. That's the bias supply. Yeah, let's see, we'll do it one more time. All right, so that's it. There's the feedback, 10K, 10K. Yes, correct. So let's go ahead and do that. And mark where I want that. And then we're going to come around, right? Another thing that's really good to keep in mind when you're building something, right? Especially if you're building it, let's say for other people, or it's going to go into the world as like a product, right? I think it's a really good idea to design or build something in a fashion that makes it easy to repair. First, so it doesn't need to be repaired. And then second, if the need should come around, that it's easy to repair. So kind of like, you know, covering everything in like epoxy so that no one knows what you're doing, or, you know, using permanent kind of fixtures, or stacking things in weird ways. All that does is make a problem for the next guy that's got to come in there one day and service it. So if you're able to take apart the amp after it's assembled with a reasonable amount of effort, right? I think that's a better idea than to, you know, weld everything shut so that you're in a problem where you got to start drilling and cutting and heating and doing all kinds of goofy stuff, or just throwing things away, right? Like if you were to goop up the whole board, you would, you know, throw it away afterwards. Or I've seen boards where people mount the components on the underside so you can't see what the values are. And I mean, I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it. I mean, there's only so many ways you could do things. So is it really a secret that you used, you know, an orange drop PS versus like a, I don't know, a Cornell polyester, you know? Is that really a trade secret that is worth, you know, all that trouble? I don't agree with that, you know? So anyway, rant off. Let's continue. So we need to put in the B- supply, right? So let's do that. And I'm one of those crazy people that like different colors. So I like to make blue for the B-. Let me see if I got any shorter blue. No? Alright, so we're going to use this. That's fine. So let's go ahead and, this is the bias supply, right? Often referred to as the B-. B+, B minus. Okay. Now obviously you can see how hard this would be to do if you had the components already on the board. I mean, you could do it, I guess, but it would be really kind of goofy for the whole thing to work that way. All right, so we got our two 10Ks. So this should be right here, should be the bias point, the node that we want to derive the supply from. Right there. Okay, we'll go around to this side. There we go. I think that's pretty good. All right, so now we can start to, and I'll do one and sort of show you what I'm getting at. And that way we won't have to, you know, spend the whole day while I'm sitting here just doing, you know, a couple of things here and there. Now, this board, it does not have some extra holes in it for sort of putting your wire through, right? So like on I got a couple of bits here. I'm going to add some stuff, right? Like so on an old Marshall, you'll have like, all right, let's see. So that's one set of 68Ks. This is the other set of 68Ks. So these are the first two grid wires to the first preamp tubes. And what I like to do is have them come out here, you know, and here. And that way you kind of have a place sort of, or right here, you have a way to thread the leads through, right? So I'm going to just go ahead and drill some pilot holes here. Right? There we go. And then two more up here, will be used. Right about there. Yeah, a little bit more over. Alright, now let me vacuum it out. Okay, so you sort of see what we got here. Where's my wires at? Okay, here we go. So we're going to use some green, right, for our grids. And the way I would do is I would come through here, right, and out the other side. So I'm going to strip it with a little bit of exposed conductor, right? I'm going to come down through the top, and I'm going to go up through the bottom. And I'm going to get it right about like that, right? And I'm going to wind this around, right? And there you have it, okay? I'm going to solder it into position. Good, right? And now this is sort of what I wanted to show you. And then you can follow this example if you so choose. Here's our chassis, right? So we'll line it up of where it's supposed to go. right? So that's where it's going to be. Now this is the grid, right, coming off of here. So on the Jose, it's going to go over to our tube over here, right? So this is going to be our first stage. So roughly I'm going to make it, I'm going to give myself a little bit of extra, right? Because it's, once you cut it, you can't cut it again, or you can't add on. So that's the case, right? And then I'm just going to repeat, right, for every single one of these turrets where it's going to go, right? And not every one of these leads is going to be dressed underneath and up. Some are, right? So like these up here, which are for, this is, yeah, so this is like the treble capacitor. So I'll have one here, right, to come out. I'll probably have one here for the supply for the cathode follower, the voltage supply for the cathode follower. Underneath of it, I'll also run some leads that'll run to this CAN capacitor, right? Because that'll be the filter capacitors for these nodes. Let's see where else I would do stuff. Okay, we got the feedback resistor right here. That connects to your output jack or your selector switch, depending upon how you want to do it. And I would probably drill for that as well. But other than that, everything else is sort of going to be wrapped around and then paid and folded underneath a little bit, right? Sort of like that. So that way it looks nice and neat and everything's held well in place. Okay, so I think that's good for right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and start pulling all these leads out and getting them where I want. And then once that's done, we'll come back and we'll start putting components on the capacitor. Putting components on the circuit card, right? Okay, so where are we at? 21 minutes. Okay, so we ran 1 minute over from where we wanted to go. So I'll continue doing this and I'll just spoon feed it to you as it's going. So thanks again for watching, and I'll see you a bit later. Oh, and don't forget to check out 3 Monkeys Solderless, right? Home of the world's best solderless audio cables. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.